they got me frog marched me across this this grass. And I wouldn't say I'm a great fan of snakes, even though my sister always had a snake. I've been very excited to see this. Now, they're very excited to show me, because this is a Brazilian product that's nowhere else in the world. Marantis. I'm very bad with terminologies. We blame it on my dyslexicness, but I mean, I don't know a lot about cotton pickers, but it looks pretty exciting. It's the 6th of March. We've now flown to a farm which is effectively about 1,200 kilometres away from where we were yesterday, and I think we're about 4,000 kilometres away from where we originally started. The airport here is the farm's own airport, and it's got a long enough runway for 747s, because the previous owners used to use 747s to take lint out. So the runway is absolutely enormous, and tarmac. So it's quite an impressive place. So the best way to get here, because it's so far out, is to catch a plane to come here. So that's what we've done. And you can see I've got some rather sexy fetching covers on here, as if I'm about to ride a horse, but these are purely to stop snakes. So in the area out here in the crops, you often have snakes which then jump and try to bite, and they're venomous, and because we're so far away from a hospital, without wearing these to protect ourselves, it's likely that we might die. So pretty exciting place here. Just to give you a bit of an update, the farm is called Amaji, and the size of the farm is 230 hectares. Sorry, crumbs, you can tell I'm English. 230,000 hectares, which they do 2 crops, so effectively 460,000 hectares is the size of the farm, if you think about it in that sense. There's 102 hectares on the farm that we're 102,000 hectares, sorry, on the farm that we're on, and 54,000 hectares of that farm is dedicated to nature. So this area, 50% of the farm has to be dedicated to nature. So, and they have 55,000 hectares, for example, of cotton across the business. We're stood now in a cotton field, and they are experimenting with prototypes robotics. This is a robotic sprayer that they're using for herbicide application. They had 50 millimeters of rain last night, and they have 1,800 mil a year. This is a plane which is part of, they have 8 planes which are applying chemical to the fields. They have self-propelled sprayers, and then they also have this robotic sprayer, which they said they would have to have 50 of these to be able to keep up just on the cotton alone. But they're experimenting with this, so they have cameras on it. They have 3 centimeter accuracy, and they can tell the program to spray before and after. They're creating maps. They have 20 drones which are flying these fields. They also have the aeroplane type drones which are scanning, and the idea is they're scanning the fields, they're producing maps back at base, and then they're uploading into the various forms of spray technology that they're using, and they're either applying separate chemicals or they are mixing chemicals one on top of the other with separate maps, insecticide, herbicides, etc. And they are experimenting with this one, and this is quite interesting. For it is not only just spraying with the nozzles with the application on the cotton just for the herbicides, but it also has other cameras on it which is also recording for insecticides to produce a separate map. So the technology here, there's a huge level of investment going on into actually producing prescriptive maps and converting what they're doing to technology in applying at the right time. They also, on their self-propelled sprayers, they also have the technology that can be as we've seen before, which can be doing the same as this, which can be with the cameras recording what's happening in the field and turning the nozzles on and off. Or if they are blanket spraying, so for example a pre-emergent spray, the cameras are turned on, they're producing maps to show any activity, which then will be uploaded for a separate application, and then that can be the same if they are doing a blanket spray on a post-emergent spray. They can be using the cameras to actually be recording insect activity, for example. Now, one of the big problems they have here is called a boll weevil, boll beetle, which BOLL, which is a major issue for them because it will burrow basically into the cotton plant and create devastation. But it can also live out in other areas for at least a month, and it can fly 3 kilometers in the wind alone to move to different blocks of land. So that is their number one pest that they are focused on trying to control because it is so difficult to kill. So it's quite an exciting farm to be on at the moment, and it's a great honour to be allowed to come here and to be able to explain to you what we're saying. It's nice to be stood in cotton. They also grow peanuts as well as corn and maize, so we'll hopefully get to see some peanuts, what that looks like, because we saw the harvester operation in the dealership yesterday, but yet to see the plant itself. Just to put the perspective of the scale of the farm, it's 33 kilometres in one direction and it's 40 kilometres in the other, and we're going on a 25 kilometre journey to go look at these fields. So it gives you the sort of size of scale of a block of land for the sitting out here. And I was just being told that the tracks, there's over 1,000 kilometres of tracks, and they have 110 machines and people which are dedicated just to maintaining these tracks to get the machinery up and down these farms, and there's one lead engineer that's in charge of that 110 people operation. He said there's 1,100 employees, and within that they have their own village with 4,000 people in it, and within that they've got 2 buses which are dedicated to taking children to the nearest town, which is 70 kilometres in that direction. There's another one in 70, which is a smaller town, but they go to the bigger one for the schooling. And then they have their own school, their own police station, and then they have their own doctor and nurses as well within the village. It's an amazing way to apply. So I believe it does 350 hectares an hour spraying the plane. So just put it into numbers. Our self-propels might be doing 35 hectares an hour as an example. So it's 10 times the output. So they just explained to me how the operation works here. So they have one gentleman that is in charge of the site here, and he's also working on safety. So they then have the guys over here, and they each have a job each, because the propeller is actually still running. When the plane comes down, it's still running because it's a speed operation, and then the plane goes again to take off to keep up with the hectares a day. So they want to have one person does each job, and nobody's running around and gets potentially impaled. So we've got one guy which is looking after the fast fill side, filling the plane. The 2 lorries, now interestingly, they don't mix the chemical here. The lorries go back to the main base. They get mixed with the prescription that the agronomist has given, and they get filled there. Then the lorries drive out here with the chemical mixed, and then the agitation on the pump is running to keep the chemical stable and mixed. And then you've got another guy which is purely doing the fuel. He's then filling he's filling the plane up with fuel. There's 1,200 litres of fuel, and there's 3,000 litres of chemical. So quite a much bigger chemical application than I believe the plane would actually lift and carry. But that's the biggest plane I believe that they can have for this operation. And the runways, they have 8 of them, and they all have to be registered, and they have to have a certificate and a licence from the government to be able to have these. And then they each have a loading area with concrete with a reception for any spillage to be taken. So they're all designed like that to reduce pollution. My father had aerial spraying done in the early part of his career, but I've never seen it in the UK. I've seen it in Australia where they put rice down on lakes, but I've never seen it in the UK. But I've just been told that you cannot grow cotton without the aeroplanes, purely because you've got to be on with the application. Some of these planes have been out very early in the morning while we were still asleep, because they put biologicals on when there's a dewy leaf, and then they go on to the herbicides when the leaf is dry. So amazing. just told me how much the planes are. He bought these two big ones last year. They're $2 million American dollars each, which is, but the power of these, he was saying, is equivalent to a private jet with a double propeller that can hold sort of 9 people. So because of the weight that they have inside them and the chemical and things, they're very powerful. So I was just discussing about the merits of, they're on controlled traffic farming, the same as we are. And so it's all controlled exactly where everything drives. He said there's certain operations that have to happen with a tractor after the crop is planted. But the difference between using an aeroplane and a wheel sprayer, for example, is a 3% damage. Now over their area, 3% damage is massive. So actually they're a real fan of the aeroplane application, and it's almost a shame that they have to use the tractors. It's part of the reason they're quite interested in using the robotics, which are obviously much smaller wheeled, much lighter, and will go between the rows more comfortably and could reduce that 3% down. You think 3% damage, and you put that over 102,000 hectares, and you then multiply that up by the gross margin of the crop, you're talking a significant amount of money. This robot is the one that they use to just purely go across the fields, taking pictures to do prescription maps, in particular for insecticides. And it's got these things at the front are to stop the bugs, and well, kills the bugs. And then on the top, it's covered in solar panels, so it actually auto charges itself, and then that allows it just to keep going day and night, 24 hours a day, just going up and down, mapping. So the weather station here, now these weather stations, as we've been driving around, are sort of dotted around on the corners. There are 287 of these, and they have one weather station per 800 hectares. So typically each field is 200 hectares each, and you know, in a perfect world they're all a perfect square going around these weather stations. But the reality is, obviously, where the land is, some are 210, some are 220, and then where they get into the following the landscape, you know, they'll change. But the principle is there's 287 of these. Now, the interesting thing about this is that all of the information is obviously going for the wind, the direction of the wind, the temperature, the humidity, and the rainfall is all going back to their main base. But they also share it with the civil defence and also with the fire department. They have 25 of their own fire trucks, which they have obviously a fire crew which is being trained by the fire department, and they work on the relationship for the fire department train their staff and their trucks on the basis that they can use those trucks as well when they have a fire somewhere else. And they need all this information because when it's at 40 degrees, 15% humidity, and let's say 40 kilometre an hour wind, one spark, whoosh, suddenly that fire is going across this country with nothing to stop it, and you know, going towards the city, 70 kilometres an hour away, and taking out all the neighbours' farms as well. So having that level of information and also that ability to deal with fire is really important. So they're working together to try and prevent those issues. But 287 weather stations, that puts my 3 to shame. So we're in the peanut field now, and I didn't appreciate that peanuts actually grew in the ground like potatoes. I thought they actually grew on the top, and so they've just pulled some out to show me. And peanuts, interestingly, will do about 3.8 tonne a hectare, and majority of the peanuts have been exported to America, to Russia, Ukraine, and to China. And one of the main uses of it is to make peanut butter. Now, how they do this to harvest it, interestingly, is the machine comes in with a share under the ground and lifts them upside down and then plonks them like this, they call it like a church. So the peanuts sit on the top and then the leaf is below. Now, the reason they do this is so that the peanuts dry, and then the leaf obviously dries, but they want to keep the peanuts off the ground because it's going straight to the table in some cases in the peanut shell, so they don't want any soil or contaminants on it. So they then leave that there, then they come in with the harvester and they harvest it. Now this and there's a lot of peanuts on there. And just to show you what it looks like, that opened up a shell, and that's what it looks like inside. They're obviously not quite ready for harvest, so they're doing it on the sandland, which has got a pH typically of about 3.2, and they've raised the pH up to 6. But they are just explaining to me that they use the sandland because they can grow the peanuts on the better land, but the issue that they have is they have harvesting difficulties, so they want the sand so easier harvesting. You can see it now as you break it open. It's sort of more obvious as the peanuts that we'd be used to. And then this is the main weed that is actually Roundup resistant, and you can see it in amongst the crop, and it completely dominates, and all of this stem, which is enormous, is just basically filled with water. So it's taking away the nutrients and the water away from the crop. Amaranthus, I'm very bad with terminologies. We blame it on my dyslexicness, but anyway, this is their biggest weed. So interesting, I said to him, what are the two main problems you have on this farm? And he said, what are your biggest challenges? I asked him. And he said this weed, and the second thing was the boll beetle, were the two main issues that they had that they was, fighting to control. And in terms of logistics, across the entire group, they need 6,000 trucks to harvest all of the different crops they grow. They own 1,000 trucks within the group, but they need 6,000 trucks at harvest to get the produce off the fields. 6,000 trucks, I mean, that is extraordinary. So they've identified that Argentina grows 400,000 hectares of peanuts a year, and the industry in Brazil was quite strong in the 70s. Soybean came along and they replaced the peanut industry with soybean, and they were saying that in the 70s it was quite common to have peanut oil on the kitchen table, and then it went to soybean purely because of the profitability. But they've identified that there is more than 400,000 hectares in Brazil of the right land type of the sand, which is currently not farmed. So they could become the third largest exporter of peanuts in the world just by converting land which is suitable, which is not currently being used for agriculture or for any use. And in terms of nitrogen, the maize requires about 120 kilograms a hectare, and the cotton wants about 180 kilograms a hectare, and the soybean is 0, and so is the peanuts. The peanuts again also can fix its own nitrogen. If you can scroll in, Tom, you can see the nodules here. These are the nitrogen fixing nodules on the roots here, which are obviously doing the work for the plant. So actually, in a rotation, they were saying that they were going to be experimenting, but they believe that they could grow 2 to 3 crops worth of peanuts, so following each other, followed by 2 years of sesame seed. So apparently sesame seed's actually also quite a big industry, and then back to the peanuts. Now what's interesting about that would effectively mean that they're then using land which is typically not being used or is a poorer grade in terms of the traditional rotation of soybean and maize, can't get the yields because it dries out. So actually their ability to scale up and utilise more land is there through a cropping change. So they've got 3 Horsch Sprayers here currently, which are 48 metres and 6,000 litres. Now that's the biggest sprayer that Horsch brings into Brazil currently. We've got the 8,000 litre models, which is more of a European based one. But I was just talking to them about the difference between the previous sprayers that they've also got. They've got 162 sprayers in total and across the business. And when they bought the 3 48s, they replaced 5 36s. And they were just telling me that the difference in scaling up with the bigger sprayers and reducing the number of sprayers they have actually makes a difference across their business of 44 spray drivers, because they run 22 sprayers they would save on, and they run 2 drivers per sprayer so that they can continuously run them. So the scaling up is actually, when you get to these numbers, is quite staggering what the additional boom width is allowing them to achieve, and trying to fight against that 3% yield penalty that they're having from the machinery going through the fields. So we're now in the livestock area. So we've just driven through the farm at the bottom, where there's some houses for the cowboys and where they keep their horses, and the cowboys were down there as we came through. And we're just having a look at the cattle here. These are actually an Indian cattle. They're quite distinctive in how they look, with that sort of hump. But they're also mixing those with the European cattle as well. And I just asked how many they've got. They've got 32,000 cattle currently within the group. There's 7,000 here on the farm. And last year they had 17,000 total. The reason they keep them, they said it's not really their business, but they said that if they're in it, they have the ability to scale up or scale down. And they were just telling me that the price of beef is good at the moment, so they've scaled up. But they're going to take me now to a new idea they're doing with the eucalyptus trees and the peanuts. So we're going to go and have a look at that. And as we look around in the landscape here, because we're on a bit of a hill and there's some valleys, it is quite attractive as you look round. You can see plumes of dust everywhere where the combines are running. So there's a combining operation happening, and lorries and chaser bins all over there. So we're in the cattle are going to be turned out onto this. So this is effectively their grass fields, and it's a really dense form of grass. And when you walk on it, the heat in there, that's sort of in amongst it, and you have to have your arms up high when you walk through it, because it's quite sharp and can cut you. But what I've just been learning is they have put 20% of the land in eucalyptus trees, in rows of trees, and they're basically a density of 3 across. But the sunlight can get in through the sides all the way through, so they've increased the yield of the eucalyptus in these very small thin belts by 50%, because around the outside of the field you'll have bigger trees because of the sunlight, etc. Now the reason they've done this is they're doubling the profitability per hectare of this land from grazing the cattle on the grass, but also with the tree income. So they will harvest this within 7 years. So they call it 7 rain cycles. But these trees here, as big as this, are only 12 months old. So they plant these 12 months old. After 7 years, they'll come and harvest them. And what they're saying is a third of the height at any one time is a third down in the roots. And one of the things they was explaining to me was that the roots go down so deep that it drags back up through the plant, through the tree, micronutrients and nutrients which have been probably put onto the land 20 years ago. And then the leaves fall off into the field, and then they are putting back nutrients from the depth back onto the top of the land. And the grass along the edge is really strong up against it. And I was inquisitive about if the trees competed with the grass in terms of moisture, but they don't, because of the speed of the trees going down in the ground. But what it also does is the grass is better in this particular area than it is in the open pastures, because it's been protected from the sunlight and the wind, so it's not droughting out as quick, so it's able to create a bigger biomass. And then the cattle are obviously doing better on it as well, because they are then able to shade in amongst it if they want to, out of the sun. And he's also explained to me, but I'm going to put it in a more sort of polite term, that if you create a more shaded area, the cattle have more sex than they do out in the sunlight. You could probably imagine what he actually told me. But so interestingly, he's doubled the income per hectare by doing this, which actually is quite amazing. It's quite a nice environment in here as well. So they've put down huge swaths of land now with this eucalyptus, which is obviously going to be permanent cattle areas. In terms of this particular land that they've obviously had in grass, you can see it's very sandy, and they say it's only got a 16% clay content. So that's pretty much why this block of land up here is in grass, as opposed to being in soybean and maize. as we were just pulling up here, a snake pulled out in front of us in the vehicle, and then they got me frog marched me across this this grass. And I wouldn't say I'm a great fan of snakes, even though my sister always had a snake. But you can see why we're wearing these boots now. So we've just been round just gone past the grain store. They've got 208,000 tonnes of grain storage here in silos. And then we went down into the chemical loading area. They were flat out busy, but it was quite interesting. They had these individual tanks, and in front they had like a receiver, which is not dissimilar to what you'd have on the side of a sprayer. And they were pouring the chemical in. It had sort of splashback guards on it and things, and it had a tunnel receiving, a hopper receiving it in, and then that was going into the main mixing tank, and then was going straight into the lorries which were coming in. Sorry, I couldn't show you that, but because they were flat out with lorries and things, we needed to keep out of there. And then we went via the village, and there's 4,000 people there, and they've got 800 rooms for casuals as well, in like these enormous sort of army barrack dormitories. And we saw the doctor's surgery, the supermarket, the sports hall, and then there was an indoor football area which children were playing in while we were there. And then there was a school which they've built all of this. So they leased out the building for the supermarket. They leased out the school to the government. So they've put obviously the school teacher in and things. And then we've just come into the seed house. So they're making their own soybean seed and also their own cotton seed, and they're selling that. And then each individual bag actually has its own kilograms in it. It's weighed individually as opposed to having a set weight. They're all different, but they can store 4,000 bags in here. And typically the bags are about 650 kgs each, and they've got them sitting on wood. So they stack them up 4 high, or even 5 high. I suppose as high as the forklift will go, but I've never seen that before. Quite an efficient way of doing it. Anyway, it's an extraordinary place. Oh yeah. So it's cold in here, and they chill the seed to make sure that because of the high heats and humidity here, to make sure the germination isn't damaged. So so we're in a cold house. So all of these blue wrapped big large bales, for want of a better word, is cotton. So inside these are effectively, each one of these, it represents what a lorry can hold, and there are 225 kilograms a bale, and it's the cotton. So the cotton yields 3.8 tonne a hectare, but the time that they've cleaned it and took the husk and things off, it goes down to 2.2 tonne a hectare. They're then baling that, and then this is going to be exported. So they've wrapped it like this. They put it on top of the wood so that it's away from the water. So if you look around, you can see the wooden things here. So that's what it's sat on. And then they sheet it all up, and then as the lorries comes in. Now, this looks like an enormous area, but we've just driven past probably 5-6 times the volume of this area so far. And there's more yet to go, just to put into perspective how vast this is. This is the cotton. So this is one of the bales. They've very kindly unwrapped it for us to have a look. But I mean, this is absolutely jammed. They're saying if you try to jam a knife in here, you'd really struggle. And then this is the sort of hessian on the outside. But so 225 kilograms a bale. And we just did a quick calculation. Just what you can see up and down is currently 14,000 tonnes. And that's just this line and that line there. And as I said, if you just turn round, it just goes on and on and on. There is rows and rows and rows of cotton bales across here. So there's a huge tonnage here. So we're inside the where they do the cotton, where it comes off the fields over 2 tonne bales, comes into the facility just over to my left, comes in there. Then what they do is they start to clean it, because at that point it's got plastic on the bales, it's got the husk on the cotton, etc., and they've got to separate it all. And as it comes through, this machine comes from America. It's I think it's the 3rd largest cotton plant in the world. And as it comes through this setup here, it then comes out over to the sides, it's cleaned it, and then it needs to rebale it. And it comes down that chute, and then it starts to rebale it, and then when you get the sort of 4.25 bales that come out, which then go into where we've just seen under the plastic. So this is quite an operation. So what they're doing at the moment is they're just having a shutdown, and they're now doing a full maintenance program. They're going through everything and rebuilding things. And he was just saying that they've got a massive reservoir of water just above because of the nature of this and because of the way that it's sort of compacting and working, that it can be prone to fire. So they have to have a lot of water available just in case the dust and things catches alight. To take a sample out of the bales, what they do is they take a sample out of both sides because it's important to them that they're able to demonstrate what the average of the bale is. So they've just laid one out where they took samples from. So these are individual samples they've taken. And what they're selling 280,000 tons of cotton. And they were just explaining to me that the Brazil is, as a marketplace, is the largest exporter of cotton in the world. And so it's important to them that they can produce quality and create trust. So you get these packs from the USDA. So the Americans set the benchmark on effectively cotton growing and grading of cotton. So they do these boxes. So each year you have to buy one of these boxes which have got gradings. So along the bottom edge here, it will actually say what the grading is. And if it's got a 1 in it as a second symbol, it means it's the higher quality. And then 5 is the leaf grade. And then the colours deteriorate. So this is a worse quality one, for a better word, than say this one. And it's the same on this side of the room. So there are two ways of determining the quality. So there is, first of all, there's the way in which you can analyse it in a lab. And I'll show you the grading on the back wall in a second. And the second way is there are specialist guys who come and actually physically take it apart and look at it, and they'll find the dirty or the dustiest part, and then they will grade it based on that. And when they sell, like on the New York Stock Exchange, when they're selling cotton, they actually, it's done on the grading. Now, if someone comes and buys a large shipment of cotton, then they send people out to here to come and grade it. And if, for example, it is a worse grade, there's a deduction. If it's a better grade, then there is an increase. And there are two standards in which there's done. There's the physical standard of the manual, and then there is the electronics side. But they're also, this business here is trying to create an AI-generated program which can actually analyze this and actually determine what it is, to try and take out the physical element of what people determine. So if you come and look at the back wall, so just this is an example. You can see this is the higher quality, and then that's the one range which we were looking at in the boxes. And obviously, as it comes down, the grading is deteriorating. But of course, there's still a value in this according to what it is, just a deduction and reward system. So there's a display here, which is just I want to show you effectively. This is what's coming in off the field. So within this, there's obviously bits of husk and bits of the seed, for example, is in there, but to try and get it out is near on impossible. It's really difficult. So this is the seed here, which the cattle go crazy for. So once it's separated, they feed that to cattle, so that's got a market. This is obviously what you're trying to achieve. This is the sort of rougher grade of cotton which has come off this. And interestingly, this is the sort of thing that goes off to make jeans. And then this end product here, this is sort of got oil in it, got a bit of dirt and whatever in it, and the husks and etc. And again, you can either feed this to cattle, or this will go off and this will be used to burn, to create heat or some sort, because it's the oil in it. For every lorry load that you saw out in the lot, they retain a sample, and that's the sample which has been inspected by the buyer, and there's a buyer's room, and they roll these out, and then they check the quality, and they agree that the price that they paid for is against the quality that what they purchased. They retain this for 12 months, and this room then gets filled full of these samples. And if there is a claim that comes back, or somebody, time it gets to the end destination, there's some unhappiness, they can come back, check the original samples to compare against. Otherwise, they'll say, no, that's not the sample I purchased. So, yeah, quite a big shed full of samples in here. So this is the buyer's room. This is where they're going to lay out all of those samples and then check But what I wanted to show you was all of these strip lights and the colour of the ceiling and the walls and this is all designed and done by the Americans so that it abides to the standard of the room that they want to operate in, to be able to not distract you away from inspecting the cotton by getting the colour bouncing back off the walls. So this area here is the stuff that's for sale. So they have 4,000 items of machinery, and they are replacing annually over 300 items. And so you'll see there's tractors, combines, cotton pickers, sprayers, loading shovels, etc. And they don't sell via the dealer. They get the best price they can from the dealer for the new item, and then they're using effectively a big auction house. But they have one in Brazil like you have in America and things, and they're selling them that way so that people can come and look at these, buy the tractor they want and drive it out. So 300 items a year going through their own compound here, and they've got everything from ambulances to pickups to cars to quite all 8 series tractors, buses, you name it. It's constantly going through. I just wanted to show you this. They've got 114 cotton harvesters. That they're roughly 1.2 million US dollars, and some of the numbers here that really take your mind away. And the cotton goes up the front, and then it basically, as it makes its way to the back, it gets baled into a round baler, and then it gets plastic wrapped, so then it drops it out the back as a plastic round bale, but one for a better word. And the configuration isn't quite right at the front here because there's about 20 in here at the moment, and there's engineers working on them all, getting everything ready for harvest. So they're going to start again harvest in July, so it's not many months away in that sense. And all of the bales and everything that we've seen, that 280,000 tonnes, that should be gone by July to clear the site ready for the next site. In terms of other numbers, the chemical in the sheds here that they got, it was absolutely racked out full of chemical. There was $50 million worth of chemical in the shed as it stands today, and they got 200,000 litres of fuel. They've got their own sort of fuel station set up as well. But coming in here, I mean, I don't know a lot about cotton pickers, but it looks pretty exciting. I've been very excited to see this now. They're very excited to show me because this is a Brazilian product that's nowhere else in the world. So they're pretty proud of this. 49 rows is take 80,000 litre tank, which is principally 70 tonne. You've got your biological tank up there. The cabin is purely for a guy to just check if there's blockages or just to move it on the road and that sort of thing. It's actually running itself up and down the field at about 13k. It's doing about 28 hectares an hour, so it's really pushing on. And it's exactly what we've been looking at, is the Maestro setup with the Brazilian type design. And this is the configuration that it goes in when it goes up and down the road. And then when it goes into field mode, they spin round and then it heads in that direction. And then these wheels enable it to spin around and turn on the headlands and things, and that's where the whole concept of this came from. This is a gantry system, was developed part of controlled traffic farming. So this is the original thinking of controlled traffic, where you took out the bottom part, you replaced it with multiple type things, so it was a new form of tractor. This is designed as a planter, big output, all robotic. The law doesn't allow them not to have an operator with it in Brazil, so that's one of the reasons there's a cab here. I mean, it is colossal, and quite frankly, it is something to marvel at. It's an extraordinary piece of engineering, and so effective, and still giving you the perfect Horsch drilling planting system with the depth. It's got the discs at the front. You come around this side, Tom, you sort of get a slightly different view of it, and it's got the sort of platform where you can run along the top to fill it with seed. I mean, it is a colossal beast. This is the farm. So what I wanted to show you was that when you start to look at these fields, these sort of rectangular fields, 199 hectares, 196, 231, 241, 196. So you get the general gist, you know, sort of an averaging of 200 hectares of field. And look at the block, the green areas here is the environmental areas. And you can see the sort of scale of the thing. This is where the cattle were, this is where the peanuts were, this is where the aeroplane was, where the 747s could land, and then about up here is where they were spraying when we came, and then this is where we are now in the yards and things, where all the plant is for the cotton, etc., to give you sort of an idea of the scale. Okay, so to run this operation, what they've got is that we're in the COA, which is the Controlled Operation of Agriculture. And there's 12 people that work in here, and basically they are mining information from lots of different technologies and trying to put it into one. So when you look at the maps here, these are obviously the fields, and you can see the field numbers, etc. The screen above is where all the weather station information is coming into, and also radar. So you can see here on this block of land out here, it is now raining. It's not raining over here. Just come over here, Tom. This is the aeroplanes that we've seen earlier today. Now they've just parked up, but they were flying about earlier while we were stood here talking. You can see where they've gone backwards and forwards, and turning here and then coming back to fill up each time. So that's showing them. See the three 48-metre Horsch Sprayers cruising across the fields. And then you've got the operation. So you've got each machine, you can see in here, it's got an icon. It's getting, what is it now? It's getting towards the end of the day. So, but there's quite a lot of sprayers still running, etc. And then you can see the coverage map here of the sprayers. Where the red dots are is where it stopped. Now they have the top screen here is actually part of the John Deere system which they use. And they actually have a plug-in device in the sprayer which is abstracting that information, even though they're Horsch sprayers. They've got this screen which they've done, and it's in each cab. They've got 260 of these, and basically there's certain information on here, so they can say, for example, you know, what one information, so they can put the information in for the job, or what I really liked, if I can find it. Here it is. So you can click to say you need fuel. That then sends a message to here. They then dispatch the fuel truck. There's different things there. I'm stuck in the mud. I'm waiting for instruction. I've broken down, and I'm cleaning the machine, and so on. Can't read Portuguese. I'm just trying to remember what they told me. But what they're trying to ascertain is how efficient different operators are and what they're actually doing in the field. So if they're stopping, say, for lunch, or if they're stopping to fix something, they record it. And that's sending the information back here. And then they're able to run reports to see the efficiency of the operation and each individual operator and each individual machine. They've got all the data on here, what the service hours are, the fuel levels, its speed it's doing. They set up alarms. So if they don't want it to spray any more than 24 kilometres an hour, they'll set an alarm on there, and it comes up in the cab, and it will come up also in the room here. So this is really, one for a better word, this is the nerve centre of the entire operation. They're even predicting when the rain's going to come, so they tell the sprayer drivers to stop, so that there is a point that they're not wasting chemical, it's had enough dry leaf time. This is extraordinary. This is quite extraordinary. This is, you know, they are now working on a system, because like in our own business, I think we've got 12 operating systems, and which is deeply frustrating for me. They're now inputting this information into one program, and they're trying to collect it off the various different ones, so that then they can focus on it. So these guys have all got different roles in this business, and they are, one for a better word, determining how the operations are happening physically on the fields. They've mapped the soil types, and where it's heavier land and where it's lighter land. This area up here is where the peanuts were, which was the sandy type land, and then this is the heavier dirt, and you can see this is sandy again, and hopefully he's going to just scroll out a bit. That's where the livestock was, and the trees, all in here. So you can see this different grade, and you can sort of see in percentages, you've got the bigger area, which is the orange, which is the better soils, and then degrading down. So they got 0 to 10% is the poorer, and then I think that's this area here. Then you've got the 10 to 15, which is these sort of areas, and then this sort of light colour is 25 to 40%. So it's sort of, you can sort of predict, I think, whereabouts you're going to get to in terms of yield on a lot of this land. But the main block of this land is actually in good soil. It's been an extraordinary experience this week in Brazil, starting on Friday last week. It's Friday today. We fly home tomorrow, so we're staying somewhere local tonight. Then we're flying back 4,000 kilometres to get back to São Paulo. And then from São Paulo we get tomorrow afternoon, we get on a plane, and then that takes us back to Heathrow, London, arriving Sunday morning early. I can't thank Horsch enough, the Horsch family, for putting this together, and the wider family in the people who work for Horsch, in particular Brazil, and the dealership, who've taken so much time out of their life to make sure that we've had an amazing trip here looking round. And I'm so grateful. I mean, it's going to take me a moment to just completely take it into my mind exactly what I've just experienced. But this particular farm, incredibly well run, very professional, a lot of employees, a lot of balls up in the air, extremely complex, but embracing technology and AI and things to a level that I hadn't really considered, and quite uplifting to see, and almost quite daunting as well, in the fact that these guys are operating on scales which I could only dream about. But the mechanism of farming is the same all around the world. It is land and people, basically, and their struggles that they have are no different from the struggles we have. But it's actually, we're all in this fight together and producing food and the profitability. And I'm sort of quite excited to going back to the UK. Guys are working hard, thinking about some of the lessons I've learned here. But I can't thank this business enough today for allowing us the opportunity to go around and see things, because they're quite a closed business and they don't necessarily like to advertise what they do. So I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity, and just wonderful. I will remember this trip for the rest of my life, and I hope you've all enjoyed our time in Brazil and seen the journey through, and hope that within it there are some ideas that you all enjoy. Carry on subscribing, and keep the nice comments, keep the bad comments to yourself, and we wish you well, and we'll see you on the other side. All the best. Bye bye.